Hello everyone, welcome to my guide to how to play Geralt in Soulcalibur VI. Now, before I start and really get into it, you should definitely, if you're interested in playing this character, get onto the Discord, the Geralt Discord. We have a bunch of resources basically and discussion channels for the character. So it's definitely a good resource to have, and it's, you know, you'll find other Geralt players and they will help you out with your matchups and stuff. So yeah, it's the place to be, in my opinion, if you want to play this character. So like, before we start, like a small character overview, what kind of a character is he? Well, first of all, he's very simple. I think he has by far the shortest move list in the entire game. And his move list is very to the point. Like, unlike most characters, I think most of the stuff in his move list has some sort of a use. Whereas with these legacy characters who have like a move list that's built up over the years, there's going to be stuff in there that's just outclassed by another normal and stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's a bit of that in Geralt's move list as well, but way less of it. So when you're learning him, you're not overwhelmed by all of these options. Because you'll look at these things and you're like, oh yeah, this is something I use in neutral, this is something I use on Oki, this is something I use in combos, and for the most part everything kind of falls in that. Like, you can label all of his moves like that, more or less. There's not really many things of which you can say this is pointless, I'm not gonna bother with it. Well, and as for his neutral, come to, you know, now that I've mentioned it, he's not like Talon or Taki, so to say, so he doesn't really want to be here. He's not that kind of offensive mix-up character, that's not who he is. And he's not like Somina or Ivy either, so he doesn't want to be like here. That's also not the kind of character he is. You know, what we like to say in the Geralt Discord is that his optimal range is kind of like at the tip of his AA range, so kind of like there. So what that means is that he's a whiff punish character, essentially. So he's relatively honest compared to most of the cast. He has some, you know, quote-unquote bullshit options to abuse, but he's a whiff punish character. Like, most of what you'll be doing with Geralt is like making them whiff something, then you whiff punish with that into a combo, or you sidestep into this. You know, he's pretty honest. So whiff punishment, that's a big thing. Another thing that he's good at is he has some very strong defensive options. I wouldn't call him a defensive character per se, because his block punishment is kind of weak. It's not like Somina or anything. But you know, this is his 14th range punish, not that. That, you know, which is not a lot. This is his 12th range punish, again, not a lot. And he does have an I-10. You know, a 10 frame starter move, but it costs, as you can see, it costs like half a bar, which is insane. But you know, simply having it is obviously is amazing, because there's only like a handful of characters that have a move like that, and he is one of them. And finally, one of his other strengths, and thank God he has this, is that he has some of the best throw games in the entire game. Let me show that again. Look at that range on his throws. This is gonna whiff, and I think this next one is gonna hit. So he has insane range on his throws, which is a good thing, because when he's like up here, he does not have, you know, any decent throws at all. They're all terrible. This is his best one, and as you can see, it's -2 on hit. So people really don't have a reason to duck against him when he's, you know, in their face. So having these good throws, that's, you know, all the better, right? Because otherwise people are just gonna stand block against you all day. So that's, you know, me getting into his bad you know, his cons, his weaknesses. So when he's up close, he doesn't have any good blows, really. Not really. He has a couple of things that are, you know, usable, I guess. But, you know, even on hit, you're gonna lose your turn, basically. So you need to use the throws. Now, when he's out here, he does have good lows, because this thing, people will hate it, because, well, it's not a natural counter, thank god, that would be busted, but it does counter step, so it will combo on a counter hit, like if they're sidewalking or whatever, and it's only -10 on hit, which means that the vast majority of the cast is not going to be able to punish it, and it jails too. Like if they're blocking, they can't like put in a GI or anything like that. Just they gotta block it and take their turn. And finally, another weakness is that he's pretty meter reliant. So for most characters in the game, meter is kind of like a nice little extra, right? You hit your full body and you're like, oh, I can, you know, I can whiff punish with one button, or I can go into soul charge and get someone off me. That's great. So for most of the cast, it's just like a tiny little extra thing when they have meter, and they don't mind not having meter. For Geralt, that's not true. If you ever find yourself out of meter, you're out of a bunch of options. Like this with punish, for example, that's me not meter burning. So it's like 30 damage, I guess. Yeah. Now if I do meter burn on it, I can do a bunch of stuff. There's even a disgusting. Excuse me. There's even a disgusting setup you can do after it, involving his unblockable, but I'll get to that later. But as you can see, it does cost 1/4 of an entire bar. So he is very meter reliant, and as such, you'll often want to use a bunch of reversalage, because reversalage is the best, well, not the best way to build meter, I guess, but it's the fastest way to build meter in the game, but it's got a bunch of downsides, obviously, because you get into the QTE sequence and all of that. So that's pretty much Geralt, you know, he's relatively honest, and he's got some bullshit, I'll admit, but we'll get into that later. But if you're looking for a basic, honest character that can teach you the basics of Soulcalibur, I think he's a very good pick. Especially if you enjoy like this whiff punishment game, like staying out here. See, that's his launcher, for example, which is like, look at that range. He's not Ivy, right? I've said this. He's not a zoner, but like he's very good at whiff punishing. And well, now that I'm still talking about his weaknesses, this also means that his strong matchups generally will be against like these short-range brawly characters. Because he has an auto GI parry, I'll get into that later. I think it's his most important tool. So that means he's, you know, these frame trap characters that are getting in your face, making you block. He's very good against those, especially because their range is shorter than his, so it's easier to whiff punish. But on the other hand, you know, against these characters like Song Mina, Ivy, even Nightmare and Siegfried, where their range is bigger than his, he can't really do the usual stuff. You know, he can't. It's a lot harder to stand out here and whiff punish him, because the viable range in which he can do it either doesn't exist, like the normal is completely safe if he dodges it, or the range in which he can stand in order to whiff punish it is a lot tinier. But yeah, that's him in a nutshell. We'll get on to, you know, some key moves, some example combos and stuff after this. Okay, some key moves. I'm not going to go over like the basic things, right? Like this 2A is, you know, it's just a generic 2A. This AA is a generic AA. Same with this BA. Now that's not to say that you should ignore these. Obviously not. They're very good at what they do, but they're not special, you know, by any means. So, and what I mean by that is that these are tools that, you know, if you're coming from like Sophitia, for example, you're gonna know how to use these attacks. Whereas some of these other ones that are unique to him, those do require some extra explanation. So the first one, this is an 8-way run move, 6-6-A, and you know, all of the follow-ups that come with it. Now, before I continue, I should probably, yeah, let me set this to guard all so that I can show you when I'm actually comboing and when I'm not. 6-6-A. This is a natural combo out of 8-way run that covers an insane amount of distance. It's a natural combo, as I've said. It jails on block, so even though it's a high into another high, they can't duck it once I've hit the first attack. So it's very safe in that regard. And you have some other options out of this string, which I wouldn't call them mix-ups, but you know, they're there. So one thing you can do is, let me get to the edge here, is you can do 6-6-A into K, and if you, well, see, that's like a little mix-up basically, because you can also go into a mid, which I'll show in a second. But if you charge that K, it can actually ring out. So, well, he's set to block, but you get the idea. If he would not be blocking that, he's getting ring out. So, especially against people who are not familiar with the matchup at all, you're gonna get a lot of free rounds using that. Because, like I've said, people they won't duck a lot against you if you're close. Because you just don't have many good lows. So at a ring edge especially, this is a good way to, you know, establish at least some sort of a low game. Another option out of that string is you go 6-6-A-B, and that will actually let you transition into one of his signs called Quen.
Down you go.
Yeah, that's basic Quen, and when you go into Quen again, it branches out. So you can do, if I'm not mistaken, like a mid. I'm not sure if it's a horizontal or a high, actually.
Down you go.
That looks like a mid. Pretty sure it's a mid. And this will also, that will also ring out. So you've got like, you know, a low and mid mix-up, you know, quote unquote. But realistically, people are just gonna block low as soon as they see that move, if they know the matchup, which will catch the K option, and then once they see like the huge orange flash of Quen, they'll block high. So, you know, you're not gonna be getting decent players with this mix-up. But it is there. It is there, and this will catch, this will cause wall splats as well if you go into a wall combo and stuff. So that's his 6-6-A. Very good, but realistically, you'll mostly just be using 6-6-A-A, which is a great way to approach. Also, 3-A is not, you know, that thing is not plus on hit, as you can see. It's, you know, unless you happen to catch them you know, stepping, and even then, I don't think it's plus. But what's so good about this is that, you know, it crosses a fair bit of distance. It's a horizontal and it's a mid, so if you're in range, they have to respect this move, you know, or maybe GI it on reaction, which would be insane, I think. But this is like a good way to get you in their face, especially against, you know, characters like Nightmare, like Ivy, even Astaroth, I guess. You could use this move. It's easily overlooked, I think, but it's pretty good. You know, you can just get in there. Next is, you know, one of his best moves out of 8-way run, I think, at least for whiff punishing. It's 4-4-A, so you can do this, you know, you just be running, and when you've, you know, sidestep the vertical or whatever, or they scoop past you, and you see an opportunity to whiff punish, you swing the stick back and you press A. And you go into this fancy animation if you're close enough. Like if I do it from way out here, for example, even there I'm still getting it. If I'm doing it from out here, yeah, see, I don't get that animation. So you do have to be close enough. Otherwise the risk of this move is just not worth it. It's hella minus on block, and it's a high, so it can also be ducked. But yeah, 4-4-A is a very good, like,
That hurt.
whiff punish out of 8-way run, especially if you're concerned that this next move is gonna whiff, which is this 3-3-B. See, that's also a very good whiff punish out of 8-way run. And, you know, there are follow-ups here. See, there's some combo potential. But this thing is, it's incredibly vertical. So the downside to that is, you know, sometimes if they do a move that advances them somewhat, and you try to whiff punish with this out of 8-way run, it will just whiff because they're off axis. You know what I mean? But you know, recognizing when to use 4-4-A and 3-3-B is a big part of the whiff punish game. And honestly, you can also just, you know, go into 3-B. That works perfectly fine as well. But yeah, 4-4-A, 3-3-B, and you know, just regular 3-B are some of his best sidestep whiff punishments tools. I think that's most of his 8-way run normals I wanted to discuss. Now, I mentioned earlier that he has some great normals at this range. Lows, I mean, great lows. So for example, this one, incredibly strong. This one, 1A, or 1AA is what you'll mostly be using. He's got a B option, but I'll talk about that later. So when I put counter hit settings on run counter, you'll see that this is a natural counter. And it's only -10 on hit, which means that nearly nobody can punish it. Like, I would especially be careful with this against Raphael. He can punish it the hardest, as far as I've seen. But like against Nightmare, you know, you don't have to care. Against Siegfried, you don't have to care. For example, Astaroth, you know, most of the cast you can just throw this out. And considering how powerful it is, it's kind of busted that most of the cast can't punish it. So I mentioned he has like a couple of things that are busted. In my opinion, it's really 3 things, and this is one of them, kind of. The other 2 are more busted. But yeah, this is less low, but you know, considering the speed of it, I wouldn't use it when you're like in their face, especially because like when you're standing here, they won't often be sidestepping. You know, you have some sort of a vertical game, but it's not incredibly strong. And if they're not sidestepping, this isn't gonna combo. And doing this thing on its own is also not an option, because as you can see, I hope, in like the little overlay I got going, it's -10 even on hits. So this is really designed as a tech trap, so using it for Loki, or you know, to catch people stepping like at this, you know, in this neutral sphere. Whereas if you're close to people, or somewhat closer to people, you really want to establish your low-high game with throws in mids rather than mids and lows. But yeah, it's 1AA is a strong low, very strong. Another strong low he's got is 1B. It's, you know, it's also pretty slow. I would even say on the cusp of being seeable. But it's a very strong rookie option because it knocks down against you. See? And then once you've established that, once you condition them, then you can get them with like a mid, right? And those 2 are vertical options, but like using 1AA, 1B, and 3B in conjunction is, you know, it's very simple, but that's like the meat and potatoes of his Oki game, right? You have a vertical low, vertical mid, and then you have something that is going to catch them rolling. So those are very important. I've already showed this move a couple times, but yeah, this is a very important move. It's like, you know, I would say your vertical whiff punish, basically. See, it's very deceptive how far that thing goes. I whiffed it there, but I think, see, there you can meter burn, you get a follow-up. Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, next. Right, I'm going to get to what is probably, I would say, is most hated move. It's also his most important move, because not only is it defensive, as you'll see, it's also a way to I would also say it's integral to his offense. So let me show you. Yeah, this is Irden, one of his signs, and it's basically an auto GI that grants you, if it hits, grants you a huge window to do whatever you want, right? You can get insane combos off of it, like, I'm talking like a third of their life bar, probably maybe fourth to a third of their life bar. You can even, if you parried something with it on the ring edge, you even have enough time to completely walk around them and then 3-beat them for a ring out. So I'm just gonna show you, like, this is not the combo section yet, but just like a basic combo you can get off this. Yeah. I dropped the just frame there, so let me try one more time. Yeah, that's like 70 damage, and there's ways to get more if you want to meter burn a bit, but again, that's for the combo section. So yeah, 4AB is very strong, not only because you can throw this, you know, in between their strings, but like Geralt's offense is not very frame data based. You know, he's not very offensive to begin with. But even then, like most of his things, like when I hit with AA, he's such a drop still. But when I hit with AA, I don't get a bunch of pressure. I'm not sure what it's like for the other characters, but as you can see at the bottom there, I'm +2, which is nothing, right? If from +2 I go into BB and the other guy goes into AA, I'm going to trade usually. So you know, what do you get after AA? That's really frame tight. That's another AA, but they can dug that. So you know, unless you want to meter burn on this, but that's not really a consistent game plan, right? Because you're gonna burn through all of your meter, and I've already discussed that that's not good. You want to have meter with Geralt, and you want to spend it efficiently, and some ways are more efficient than others. That's just how it is. But so if you want people to respect you, if you want to have long turns on offense, you need to make people afraid of Irden. So he's kind of like a parry character. Like if you're used to, for example, playing Kali in Street Fighter V, you know the parries are a big part of your game plan because they make people hesitate. As well as in Tekken, there are a bunch of characters that have these parry moves. Like I think Jin especially. I'm not much of a Tekken player, but Jin has like a catch-all parry as far as I know. And basically, you want people to respect you even when the frame data dictates that they shouldn't. And once you can do that, once you can get them to sit still, you can start doing, you know, your more interesting things. And Irden is pretty important in order to get there. And finally, I've talked this, you know, I've mentioned them a bunch of times, but he has very good throws. Like if I'm standing here, I'm gonna get it, I think. And you know, he's got a bunch of ring out potential off of them as well. Like forward throw will ring out. See? Ring out off of a forward throw, and I think left side. Ring out as well, so left side. Yeah. This is also a potential ring out. You get like 70 damage off of the backside.
Deserve that.
The backside throw. And you know, let's say if you have meter to spare, because what I'm about to show you is pretty expensive. You actually get like a mix-up. But well, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can meter burn like half of a full gauge to get a command grab, basically.
Oh, got you now.
And I can input that either with a forward tech or a back tech. So this, yeah, well, you get that animation if you. But basically, what I'm trying to say is this is a 70 damage grab. That's a mix-up. It's a mix-up between a forward grab break and a backwards grab break, which is pretty strong. Now, sadly, it's kind of hard to ring out with this. I only heard that it's possible. I've never even seen it. But supposedly, in some situations, it can ring out. But yeah, when you're trying to go for ring outs at the ring edge, it's really the forward that you're ringing. that is going to get you what you're looking for, that ring out. Okay, let's get into some example combos off of, like, you know, I'm gonna keep them very basic. He's got some. Well, we'll see if I'll, you know, I'm kind of winging it, but let's see if I can keep it basic. So, you know, the meat and potatoes of all combos in this game, you know, off of 3B, right? That's his launcher. So off of 3B, you can do 6AB. And notice the range at which this puts the opponent, right? It's a perfect range for getting a grab, or you know, another one of those, or like a 1B, right? And those were all pretty vertical, even though, you know, the throws do track quite a bit in this game. But let's say if I put him to Ukemi, Ukemi's here, then he's getting fucked with that. So, as I've said earlier, that's really the meat and potatoes of your Ogi game. If you wanna catch them sidestepping or performing an Ukemi, use 1AA. If you think they're gonna block low, use 3B. If you think they're gonna block high, you use 1B. And also, if anyone is watching this looking to get tips against, you know, for the Geralt matchup, I would suggest that... that just barely went. I would suggest to attempt to roll out of his pressure. One, because it beats, you know, 2 out of 3 options. Even though, you know, most Geralts will go for 1AA because, ironically, it's kind of the safest option. Because it's never going to whiff and it's only -10. But if you do get hit by it, depending on the range, but usually you'll get, you know, you get thrown back so far that you're out of this, you know, quote-unquote vortex between 3B and 1B. Because if this hits, you know, that's a vortex situation. If he doesn't roll, I can do 3B or another 1B, and he will keep getting knocked down in the same spot, and I can keep cycling it. Whereas if he rolls, he's out. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's the 3B combo. And another thing that's interesting, this is a normal, I don't see, or an attack I should say, that I don't see many Geralts use. I'm sending too close. But let's say you're like here, let's say you're like there, and you're having doubts as to whether or not your combo is going to ring out over the small wall there. He's got a pretty good attack, which is 6B plus K into B. Yeah, well, I got like a high wall splat, but you know, I got it again. But what I'm trying to say is that you're losing a bit of damage. It's not a lot, you're losing a bit of damage. But because of the 6B plus K popping you up just a tiny bit higher, it's going to give you ring outs across these tiny walls that you otherwise wouldn't get. You can get that move in a bunch of combos. So if you ever find yourself doubting as to whether or not, you know, you're gonna ring out over the wall, I would go ring out. It's going to ring out just slightly more often than your regular. Excuse me, than your regular things. Now, some of it I'll go over just his key moves, right? If you whiff punish with 6 B, you get nothing, right? But if you hold the second B, if you meter burst, right? That's guaranteed. Now, if they don't Ukemi, let me turn this off. Well, first let me keep it on actually. See, he dodges that if he Ukemis. If he does not Ukemi, if he tries to like get up in place. Hold on, did I turn it off? No, I didn't. None. Okay. See what a huge damage increase that is? So you should test your opponent for this knowledge, because it's a huge damage increase. And then, you know, once you've noticed that they're performing Ukemis out of it, you know, then you just go for the guaranteed stuff. Or there's a mix-up involved, a very dirty mix-up, using his unblockable. I'll show that in a bit. But you can get some extra damage off of some of his combos if you use like the rule, the B plus K rule. You can also, I wouldn't advise, but you can also go super from here. Now super is very expensive, and it's only, like I'm getting like 30 extra damage in this case, for 4 bars, I mean 4 little pips, you know, a full bar in total. That is, in my opinion, just totally not worth it. I mean, obviously, do it if it's gonna kill, if your other options aren't. But I would be very... Yeah, I'm cautioning you against overusing Geralt's critical edge, because unlike other characters, he's just got so many great options. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a good critical edge because you can be standing like, I think, way out here maybe, and that's gonna hit. Yeah, see, so it's a very good, like, one button with that is gonna take like 1/3 of his, 80 damage, so that's 1/3 of his lifeline. So don't get me wrong, it's pretty good, but it's not the best. And min-maxing the use of your meter is pretty important. That tiny, you know, that aside. Now 3-3B kind of functions the same as 6BB, sorry. So this thing, you can also go into that, or you can also, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you can also get that if you were so far. Now the difference also being that you can first do this if you want to get it for a bit. You could do that. Also, if you get either of these knockdowns, like, yeah, I wasn't. It's kind of finicky as to when it will ring out, but yeah. So using 1K if they're at the ring edge will sometimes ring them out, like, somewhat to the back and to the left. And it will behave the same way off of this thing, off of 3QB into that, it can ring out if you've got them like right at the ring edge. Yeah, I should go over the Earden combo as well, which is very important. It's very important. Six escape, 4A, and you do need to hit the just frame there. So let me try again. Just frame into 1A. Now, if you're having, you know, let's say you're just new to Geralt or you're new to fighting and you're having trouble hitting that just frame. I messed it up because I don't actually go for that combo a lot. You can do that, and that might still hit afterwards. The 1A, I'm not entirely sure. But you have options. Like if you're not confident in hitting the just frame, I do recommend just practicing it, right? Because it is very important, first of all, and it's also very strong. I think that's most of his combos. Like I can't recall if I'm missing like a very important launcher right now. I don't think I am. So yeah, let's just keep it at that. Keep it short and simple. Now for his lethal hits. Again, I'll just show a couple of you know basic things you can do. So if you do A plus B, which is a universal break attack, and he's doing some kind of GI move, like reversal edge even as well, it will cause a lethal hit, and you can get a combo off of that. So and the reason I'm showing this combo first is because his other lethal hits, more or less, or his other important lethal hits, I should say, all follow more or less the same combo path, but this thing doesn't. So if you get a lethal hit using A plus B, you just do B plus K, back turn B plus K, into either 1AA or just a regular B. Because, you know, the thing I just did is, you know, you can actually tech out so that's what you do off of A plus B. Now his A plus B is not super good. He's only got one break attack. It's a vertical. It's and it's pretty slow. It's incredibly slow. I think this is like 35 frames of startup, 36 according to Scuffle. So yeah, it's very, very slow. But it does have its use, right? There are these kinds of players that just, you know, they throw out reversal edge, they GI after everything. If you use this move once or twice in a set, it'll really throw them off their game. Which is exactly what you want, right? You want people to respect you, so A plus B, you do need to know what you can get off of it. Now, yeah, I should set this to counter-setting sidestep. Right, so I've said earlier that 1AA is kind of like your go-to attack, your go-to normal when you're trying to catch people sidestepping or rolling, and that's true. But if your enemy is at full meter, you can lethal hit off 1 AP. So I would, in that situation, like unless they're on very low life, but I would start, you know, in situations where you would use 1 AA, I would start throwing in 1 AP. Because I'll show you what the reward is. I even got a ring out, and I was like, you know, that was from halfway across the screen, but like the typical Earden combo will work after that, and it will also work after all of these other lethal hits. And his lethal hits kind of work together, right? Because like, the 1 AP, not that, the 1 AP, that will hit if they have full meter, and most of his other lethal hits will hit if they have, if they're in soul charge. So they can't hoard meter, because then you can get lethal hits with 1 AP. They can't go in soul charge, because then you can get lethal hits with all of this other stuff that you have. So what you're really doing simply by picking Geralt is you're forcing them to play in a certain way, which is, first of all, spend meter as soon as possible. Like, they don't ever want to reach full gauge against the Geralt. That's, you know, strong players are going to avoid that. And you're also disincentivizing them from using it for soul charge, because in soul charge you also get a bunch of lethal hits. So realistically, what are people going to do? They're going to spend it as soon as possible, and they're going to spend it on supers rather than soul charges. Depending on what kind of character you're facing, like Ivy or Zaslamel, they're not going to care, right? They throw those supers out like crazy anyway. But some characters have insane soul charges, like Siegfried or Killick. And you know, picking Geralt into those characters is really, it's throwing a wrench into their game plan, you know what I mean? They're going to have to reevaluate how they use meter, and especially if they're used to crutching on it, then they won't be able to anymore. So I just put not Siegfried, just put Nightmare here into just put him in soul charge, just to show you. Like, and same thing applies, right? Like I mentioned earlier, that if he has full meter, you replace 1 AA with 1 AB. Now, same thing, if he's in soul charge, you replace 3B, this thing, you replace that with 4B, because that will lethal hit. So let me show. Again, it's really the same combo we get off of this. I hope I don't make it out. That's the same combo you're getting off of that. So it's super strong, and I think there's some other, you know, I think 48 actually. Yeah. So this just frame move that I'm using in his combos is also pretty good in just in neutral, because it will catch step. You get a bunch of stuff off it. That was a very short combo. It did like 80 damage. Now, like I said, right, I don't think as the game matures, I don't think you're going to get a lot of lethal hits with Geralt, because people are going to see what character you're playing, and they're just going to avoid reaching maximum gauge, and they're going to avoid using soul charge. I think that's how it's going to play out. They're just going to use supers. But you should still know these things, because if people catch on that your anti-soul charge combos aren't strong, that they're not gonna care about going into it, right? So definitely learn these combos, especially now that the game is new. People are gonna soul charge on you like crazy, and they'll be very surprised when you hit like, you know, a stray 1 AP, and you're gonna take like half of their life bar off of it. They're gonna, and I've even come across people who haven't labbed against Geralt, and they've got no clue, right? They'll sit on max gauge for like 2-3 rounds in a row, and you get lethal hits all day long. So definitely learn these lethal hit combos, are very strong. There's a bunch of other things, but I wouldn't say they're important. Like if he's in soul charge, like the dunk is a lethal hit, and you can get like a tiny little 3p at the end of it. It's not hugely important. And they keep forgetting what it is. Anyway, he's got some other lethal hit things that are, I would say, they're less important than the ones I've shown you. So worry about those once you get the basics down. You know, with these more important moves, you know, keep it simple before you branch out. Now this next section, I'm gonna keep very short because I've actually already made a video about this. But you know, one of these dirty things that I've been referencing all this time is Geralt actually gets to do, in certain situations, a true 50-50 setup between a meaty unblockable, and something that, you know, a pickup combo basically. So I'll just give you one example, and then if you're interested in learning this dirt, then I'll link it in the description, the video description below. So see, you can meet, but that still catches him, right? And if he stays down, you can go into the roll that I've shown earlier. And I'm just gonna show you what this thing does. Like, then you can go into the usual combo. Again, you get a ring out from halfway across the stage, right? Disgusting, absolutely disgusting. So yeah, it's an important thing, I think, because you can. Well, he doesn't have very good offense, as I've said earlier, right? But this is a good way to really make people fear it, because he's got some mix-ups, don't get me wrong, but it's like tiny little poke damage almost. But this setup, if you hit it, that's at least a third of their life bar just gone, off of, you know, I guess, a coin flip. So it's a good thing to have, because it can help you clutch out a game, you know, where you're really like, you know, I need to use this one opportunity I've got and make it count, and that's where this thing is gonna come in handy. Now, finally, you know, in the beginning I like very shortly said that he's got a good defensive game, but it's not the way you think. It's not like Sophitia, you know, where you block something and you get like massive damage and you know, some Oki. Because, you know, 12 frame punish, this 14 frame punish, this 16 frame punish, not even worth mentioning, 18 frames, this, which you can meter burn for if you wanted to, and then 20 frames, this, right? And his crouch block punishment is either while standing B, which is again not a whole lot. This is punishable, by the way. And from crouch, it's that thing again. You can input that from crouch, thank God. So you don't have a whole bunch of options if you crouch block something. You want to whiff punish things. So, you know, avoid them altogether. Now, he has got a bunch of tools that make me consider that he has a good defensive game. But you really need to know your matchups well, and you need to anticipate well, because you can't just block something and go, oh right, I can punish this with, you know, well, you can't do that, but it's not a whole lot of reward, you know what I mean? And this is the reason I picked Nightmare here, because there are actually situations where that I can show all of these things off. So first thing, he's got Irden, which unlike GI, you don't usually have to time. Like, there are certain strings in this game where you can GI both follow-ups, but there's a mix-up in timing. So, like, unless you're like some sort of godlike player and you see which is the follow-up move, and then you do the GI. Usually you're doing it, you know, on a read, you know, some sort of educated guess. Right, with Earden, because the GI window is so much longer, it's kind of like an option select almost, right? Like it doesn't matter for certain strings which of the follow-ups they pick, this thing is gonna beat it. So that's Earden, right? It's gonna make it easier to block and just get out of certain string mix-ups, you know, canned mix-ups basically. Then he's got a command sidestep.
Come on!
Whoa.
Come on!
Now, you've probably noticed that it's pretty, you know, compared to a regular sidestep, it's a lot slower, but it does cover more distance, and it also dodges out of the way faster. I'll show it, you know, I'll show it in action in a bit. Then another move he has is 8-way run 8 actually, so 2-2A or 8-8-8. It's got like a tiny auto GI window that only works against mid-horizontal attacks. Only mid-horizontal. So that's oddly specific, but then again, mid-horizontal attacks, like, again, I'm not a huge Soulcalibur veteran or anything, but as far as I understand, mid-horizontal attacks are very strong because they're horizontal, you can't sidestep them, they're mid, so you can't duck them, you can't jump them, you have to block these moves. Which means that people using a mid-horizontal sort of get used to it hitting, you know what I mean? So if you have a tool that really punishes that kind of attack extremely hard, it's going to make people second guess their game, and that's really what you want to do. So, first let me show off Earden. Need to go to his move list. I think I need to go to his horizontals for this. I actually prepared this bit, you know, can you believe it? I need his 3A. Yeah, this thing, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so there's kind of a mix-up between timing here, because for this first thing that he does, I can just GI pretty much immediately, even though I'm messing it up right now. Yeah. Right, so that's the first thing he can do. He can do 3AA, and then you block the first 3A, and you GI immediately, and you've got him. But if I go for 3AK, hold on, have I got that right? He's still doing the other thing. Yeah. Yeah, you can see that this is a much slower move. So if you see, I get screwed over. So I wouldn't call it a mix-up, but there's a mix-up in GI timing. You cannot just mash GI against this string. That doesn't work. But what you can do is you can mash Earden, and it will catch both Earden. I got the K option, and just for the record, I'll also show A. So Earden just gets rid of this thing immediately. Obviously, you can also do 3A, do nothing, and then punish you for using Earden. But that's, then we're a couple layers deeper into the Yomi, So that's Earden, that's the strength of Earden. Now, one of his other things that people really dislike. So this is his BB, right? Another thing, many people have tried this actually. You block the first hit and you try to sidestep it, and I'll try. I tried to sidestep right, and it didn't let me out of it. I'll try sidestep left. See? I got further than I did with the sidestep right, but he still hit me out of it. Now I'll show you what happens if I command sidestep. See that? That is insane, right? So you really need to lab against, for your matchups basically. So yeah, I did it a bit too late there, I think. So it's pretty strong. So that's me punishing his BB option. I will show you what I can do against AA. Block the first hit, then you get a lethal hit. See? And it's not like these are not, you know, these are not like obscure strengths. This is just his AA and his BB, you know. And you know, I picked Nightmare because people hate Nightmare, and I guess this is a way for me to, you know, help you people out. Because if you're gonna pick up this game, you're gonna play Geralt, and you're gonna start playing online, you're going to face a lot of Nightmare. So, you know, from me to you, use this last move I show you to beat this AA. Use the command sidestep to beat his B. Now I'm gonna, you know, round off here. I think I showed most of what I wanted to show and gave you a good impression of what Geralt is like. If you want to learn more, come check out the Discord. I'll make sure to link it in the video description. And yeah, we've got resources for you guys, right? There's like a guide that lists a bunch of combos. It's still a work in progress, but it's there. And we've got like a shared document where we give, you know, where we list matchup tips. Also very much a work in progress, but everyone can comment on that, and then, you know, we'll update it once, you know, we take care of our guys in the Geralt Discord, is what I'm trying to say. So have fun, keep on witching.